Hi, I'm Tom Burgess, and thank you for listening to The Real Agenda, the podcast for political change.
And hi, I'm Satya Kartara, and welcome to the latest edition of our new weekly series, The Weekly Wake Up, the news, comments and action show.
And in today's show, we'll be looking at some of the more serious developments in the ruthless destruction of society that's been caused by some proactive government austerity policies.
And then in our call to action, we look at what can be done and what you can do to help make positive change happen.
And this week, we'd like to introduce Hugh Clark, our man in Brussels, but he's today here in London, and he's going to talk to us about the European election. How's it going, Hugh?
I'm great, thanks. All good. Pleased to be joining the show. First of all, Tom, I'd like to say a special bonjour, hola, guten tag. Yes, it's a European hello. For me, Hugh Clark. Really pleased to be joining the show today, Tom. Satya, thank you for having me.
Thank you for that, Hugh. It's great to have you here. And Tom, first you're going to give us a brief update on what you've been up to this week.
Well, thanks, Satya. Yes, it's been another busy week here at The Real Agenda, and we've had quite a few interesting meetings in the last week. And but I did take some time out to watch a new documentary that's just out on Netflix called Knock Down the House. Now, has anybody else seen that? Have you seen it, Satya?
I have heard about it, but I haven't seen it.
Have you seen it, Hugh?
I haven't, no.
Okay, well, I certainly recommend it. It actually, and I watched the whole thing, brought a tear to my eye, because this documentary follows 4 insurgent candidates in the 2018 midterm elections in the United States. And one of those candidates is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who first won the Democratic primary in New York against a very well-established Democrat, and then went on to win the election for Congress, and now is known across the world for a no-nonsense approach in getting things done.
Wow.
So that was, and it didn't just follow her, actually. There was 3 other candidates and who didn't actually win, but it did, when it talked about her, talked about all of them, it was from very early stages in the campaign, and then you see to get through to the end of that. So it just shows if you've got determination, you can win against all odds, which I think she did, and she seems to have made a very useful contribution to what's been going on in the United States.
So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez isn't running for the presidential elections, is she?
No, she isn't. She's now a congresswoman and in the House of Representatives, so she cannot run for president right now because she's only 29. You have to be 35, I think, to run for president.
Gosh, I didn't know there was an age limit on there. Is there an upper age limit?
Well, surprisingly, not really.
Not dead, I'd say.
Well, that's a matter of opinion, I suppose, really, isn't it? But it's no, and we seem to have quite a few older candidates.
Yes, because Bernie Sanders. How old is Bernie Sanders?
Well, he's like mid-70s. But it's not so much the age; it's your experience and his agenda. Certainly with Bernie Sanders, I think it's the agenda and what he's trying to say. But I don't think it's whether age should be a limit on what you do. It's very difficult to determine, but it is a lot of work. Obviously, I guess a lot of hard work.
Bernie Sanders is even older than Donald Trump, which is hard to do, isn't it?
77 years old, Bernie Sanders.
Well, good for him. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
I've actually met him on a couple of occasions, and his family when I was there in California, and obviously I campaigned on his 2016 campaign, and I'm just very impressed with his energy and enthusiasm. So I wish him all the best. But as we said, we need, in all countries, we need a new guard. We need the younger people coming up and taking over, learning from the experience of people. But it's very important to have
yeah, absolutely, new blood.
New blood indeed. Well, there we go. So do listen to that. I think, actually, there was another interest, well, whether you find it interesting, but I was watching this documentary and what happened was, I think, I know that name. And it's actually one of my Facebook friends from the Bernie Sanders campaign who was actually the campaign manager for one of the other candidates, Amy Villela, who stood in Nevada and sadly didn't win. But there you go. So, yes, moving on. We live in extraordinary political times, but, things have got to keep going. So many of us hope there'll be a change in the way we do politics and where our politicians are actually more courageous and compassionate. And in case you missed the latest episode of The Real Agenda, we had a episode called Revitalising British Politics. Is it possible? And it went out last Tuesday. It includes an interview with Nick Silver, Radix, who along with Zoe Hodge co-authored the book A Guide to New Political Movements, How to Do Politics in the 21st Century. And we have a copy here in the Real Agenda Library if you'd like to have a read of it, team.
Absolutely.
Good, well, we'll pass that on. And also, before he's did the interview, or rather, I think he did it after the interview with us, both Zoe and Nick were interviewed by Alan Bolton at Sky News, and then The Real Agenda. So it's certainly worth a listen. Well, The Real Agenda one's worth a listen. Also, coming up, we've been doing this week, we're interviewing Madeleine Kay, the EU Supergirl and a relentless campaigner to promote us remaining in the European Union. So that will make a very interesting episode.
Yeah, I've only just come across her. She sounds fantastic.
Oh, she's brilliant. She's all over the place. Really campaigning quite hard.
Is she making any impact?
Well, we haven't left the European Union yet. So
Could be all her.
It's very interesting what she's been doing. She appears everywhere, a lot across continental Europe. She won the Young European Award of the Year. Good luck to her. And another interview we did was with Ryan Wayne, who's CEO of United for Change, the new political movement. And also be talking to Laura Gardner from the Resolution Foundation about their report of the Intergenerational Commission and what has happened since it was published last year. So there you go. That's some of the things that I've been up to. But how about a word from Hugh about the European Parliament elections? You've been working on something, Hugh. Tell us about it.
Well, thanks, Tom. Well, yeah, guys, it's been a very interesting time, has it not? Who would have thought that after the Prime Minister had promised MPs 108 times that the final Brexit date would fall on March 29th, we'd still be here and having to vote in the European elections. Crazy, right? Well, we're here with only a few weeks before the EU elections that are supposed to happen on Thursday, 23rd of May. I say supposed to happen because the only thing that will stop this from happening is if we magically managed to get approval on a withdrawal agreement before then.
Well, let's hope not.
I'm sorry to say that if you haven't registered to vote by now, it's too late. If you've asked to vote by post, you will probably receive ballot paper around the 11th of May. So in light of this, I've been asking myself quite a few questions, as I'm sure a lot of you have been as well. Who are these MEP candidates? What do they stand for? Do you guys know?
I'm not sure at all, actually, Hugh.
Well, not out of the 73 for each party. That's quite a few. But
It is. So I thought I'd go out on a limb and ask all MEP candidates to send us in a short video of themselves answering 3 simple questions. So they also have 3 minutes to do this in, so it should be quite interesting. The 3 questions are, so 1, why do you want to be an MEP? 2, what would you like to achieve in the European Parliament and how would you help people struggling in today's society? 3, why should we vote for your party? And there I'm asking them also to mention which European group they'd be joining.
I just have one question, Hugh. When we vote in these elections, do we vote for an individual or a party?
Well, Satya, you'd be voting for a party. You can vote for each individual MEP, but your vote will go towards the party that they're in. Okay. Our deadline for submission to these 3 questions will be the 12th of May. So if you're listening and you're an MEP candidate, please do send your videos in before then. My email is hugh@realagendaradio.org. Let me know if you have any questions or comments on this. It'd be great to hear from you.
Thanks very much, Hugh. And that will be put together in a future podcast, correct?
That's right.
And have some of the links on our YouTube channel.
Thanks for that, Hugh. That's really fascinating, even though we didn't think we were going to be here. Is there somewhere that our listeners can go to get more information about EU policies?
Yes. If you go to yourvotematters.eu, there's also a great quiz there that you can take to see which politicians, national parties and EU political groups match your views. Well, this is all based on your current MEP's voting history. So that's a great website to go and have a look at. It'll give you a little bit more information on how the EU works as well.
That's great, Hugh. Thank you.
So it's now time to look at some of the stories for the week. And so that's over to you, Satya. What are you going to tell us today?
Well, Tom, I've got a couple of stories that have struck me this week. The first is about North Dean Primary School in Great Yarmouth, and it starts with a young 11-year-old girl who wrote to her head teacher saying that her mum had run out of money and they had no food. Now, the head teacher was so alarmed by this note that she went and met the family at home. And when she got there, indeed, she found that the cupboards were bare and there was actually no food in the house. And this head teacher, Debbie Whitting, who actually sounds like a fantastic person, went out and actually did some shopping for the week for that family. But then she got to thinking that if this family is suffering in silence in that area, which is a very deprived area of the UK, there may be other families who are also struggling to make ends meet. So she decided to start a food bank at the school, and it started small with the teachers and some of the parents actually donating food, but very quickly they found that there was a real need and lots of families were coming to get food parcels from the school, and it's now grown to the wider community actually raising funds for the school. And not only are they providing food for the families of the children within their schools and the local community, but they're also doing free cookery lessons to help parents to cook nutritious food on a tight budget. And they provide things like a haircutting service because the children couldn't afford to go and get their hair cut. I mean, these are sort of very simple things that we take for granted that the school is now having to provide. And what they're saying is they have now become the fourth emergency service.
I know, that's absolutely sad, isn't it? That, here we've got schools that are taking over and filling in. They have a very useful role, obviously, to play in society and there to educate, and it's very good what these people are doing. But the fact that we've got ourselves into this mess as a country is just so disturbing.
I mean, even the government's own report, which looks at the index of multiple deprivation, says that Great Yarmouth itself and the 61 neighbourhoods within that area are amongst the 10% most deprived in the UK. Linked to that is that because most of the industry has gone from there and it's very seasonal work around that area, the earnings will be much lower than anywhere else. Life expectancy will be lower. GCSE results will also be lower for most of those young people. And their health will be much worse than the average in England. So when people are living in this poverty, it actually has a knock-on effect on all other parts of their life.
As a follow-up to that very serious story, there was a positive note that I recall reading in the last few days about Great Yarmouth area, which used to be very much, it's tourist. The town nearby, Lowestoft, is a big fishing port, and of course this has all changed. But now there's a lot of activity in renewables, in wind farms, offshore wind farms. And there were stories of people that have been trained and jobs were actually starting to pick up in Yarmouth because they were training people to maintain and construct and to help with these wind farms. And actually that sort of lends itself into the Green New Deal concept of actually we put a lot more investment and effort into renewables, and actually the local college apparently is starting to do training related to renewables and energy generation. That's a positive step, and that's what we should be doing, and it'll start to change the area, won't it?
Exactly. It's about investment. It's about investing in these communities, investing in those local areas, and it's not about taking money away from them. The other story is very much related to this one, and again, it is about people living in dire straits on some very basic needs. And a woman called Lizzie Hall, who set up a hygiene bank, and now I didn't even think about this as a problem, but what she found was that food banks don't or are not able to provide basic toiletries for people who can't afford them. So you kind of think about people who can't afford toothpaste and toothbrushes, soap, shampoo, deodorants. And, there were stories of young people going to school and actually being very embarrassed and ashamed because they felt that they smelt and they weren't clean. And so you can just imagine how much bullying and things go on with those young people and putting them at real risk of all sorts of terrible things that are happening. Just think that, again, most of us take these things for granted. These are our basic human needs that in our country, people are not being able to afford. And we are a country that's fifth largest economy in the world. This should not be happening here.
A lot of us are removed from what you talked about. But so many people are not, and it's their everyday existence. And we cannot just let this stand by and do nothing.
The interesting thing was that both of these stories were linked to the problems with universal credit. And one of the major changes within that was that payments have gone from a weekly payment to a monthly payment. And you can just imagine, if you put yourselves into the shoes of those people who are actually used to getting their payments weekly and are not used to budgeting on a monthly basis, how difficult that might be for them. So I think the issues around the implementation of universal credit has left a lot to be desired and has actually left some of these families in real problems because they just can't make their money stretch for that whole month.
I know, it just seems to feel as some of the politicians and for that matter, the government bodies implementing these things just don't see it. Or if they do, what's happening about it. I just find it incredible. Well, thanks for that, Satya. Yes, it is indeed so depressing. But, we have to be positive because it's no good just talking about it. We've got to take action. So this means coming together and trying to make things happen.
Tom, in our society, we believe in showing compassion towards other and helping and protecting each other from harm. And I think that's what politicians should be doing. That's what they should be focusing on. And yet right now we have 14 million people who live in poverty. And I think we share a moral responsibility to ensure that everyone in our country has a decent standard of living.
I know. That is absolutely right. And I think, we did not vote for this. We actually vote for a government to help raise living standards, not move us backward. And if our politicians can't do what we want, then we need some new elected representatives that will. Here's a couple of things that I think we can do. One thing that could be done, practical actions, is raise income standards. And this doesn't apply just to the minimum wage needs to be raised, but it also applies to welfare benefits. Now, we could do this, and we could actually start with paying public sector workers more, those that are on the lowest wages. We could also abolish council tax and business rates and introduce rent controls and have a property tax based on the value of land. So therefore, we'd be taxing wealth, not income. And that's a big difference. So we're not taking money from people who haven't got it. It's the people that have the wealth that's sitting there that are going to have to contribute more. And this is properly implemented, it would mean that council tax would be lower for lower and middle income families. So they would be better off and would be less of a struggle. And it would mean that 30% of households who exempt from council tax because they're tenants. And so therefore it's also going to make a difference. And this would help fund more social affordable housing.
That's great, Tom. We just need the political will for someone to actually get out there and do that. Because as somebody, we were saying last week that poverty is a political choice. These policies that politicians, they're a political choice. We don't have to do this and we can change it. Well,
I know we can. And I think one of the things is that successive governments have shied away from taxing wealth as they're afraid of repercussions from the rich and powerful. And what I say is, well, no more. We have to face up to reality. The money is there. Let's look a bit closer at what actually people could do. So over to you, Satya.
Well, I'm all one for saying get out there and campaign. We've seen, as we said last week, what campaigns can do if they're done properly. So, and anybody who wants to make a difference can get out there. So get involved in campaigns like Taxpayers Against Poverty in Crisis. Or
the homelessness charity.
The homelessness charity. Compass is the campaign for a good society. So there's lots of things that people can do.
So what do you think? Do email us at tom@realagendaradio.org with your comments and ideas, as this is your show and we'd love to hear from you. And as we've already mentioned, what's up next on the Real Agenda? We've got our Challenges for Change series with Madeleine Kay, the EU Supergirl. And we'll be talking to the Resolution Foundation about raising living standards. That will be with Laura Gardner. So listen out for those coming up. That's all soon on the Real Agenda, the podcast for political change.
Thanks for listening, and thank you for the 5 out of 5 rating. So please pass the message on and get your friends to listen and to take action. If you'd like to contribute to the show, just let us know. And if you want to subscribe by sending us an email, and we will add you to the mailing list so you can get notified of each of the new episodes as soon as they're released.
Or you can subscribe on your podcast provider. Also, check out our website at realagendaradio.org. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter.
And a special thanks to our sponsors, Reverse Media Group, one of the fastest growing research and media companies. Find out why at reversemediagroup.com. One thing is certain, people want change to a more compassionate and just society, as well as a more courageous politicians who are prepared to do the right thing for the people over party. It's urgent and it's up to us to make it happen. That's the real agenda. And it's goodbye from me, Tom Burgess.
And it's goodbye from me, Satya Kartara.
And it's goodbye from me, Hugh Clark.
Thank you for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.